it's Dexter and me again, and we start today's video with some unexpected good news. Now I subscribe to a car magazine here in the UK called Evo, and I wrote to them last month. I sent a letter in, and it's been chosen as Letter of the Month, or Star Letter, and I've won rather a nice watch, which is lovely. So I look forward to receiving that in the post in due course. But that's enough of cars for today. Unfortunately, I haven't been out driving much lately. I've just not been up to it. So anyway, today's video is all about my new favourite camera, the Fujifilm X-T2. Now obviously this is purely subjective. You may have your own opinion, your own favourite camera, and that is fantastic. But this is my channel and it's my opinion on my camera. Now the words legendary and iconic get bandied about so easily these days. But I feel there are a couple of iconic digital cameras. For me, they are the Nikon D700 and the Canon 5D series. Now these cameras brought full frame really to the consumer masses in like a more sort of compact camera design. I think the Nikon D700 will go down as one of Nikon's greatest ever cameras. I owned them for a year or so and absolutely loved it to bits. It was a fantastic camera. And when I traded it in for my D800, I was a little bit upset at first because I got rid of my D700. But you know, I moved on. I grew to love the D800 as a great camera. But it just didn't have that something special that the D700 had. Even though it was pretty well the same sort of design, the Nikon D700 just felt, I don't know, it felt different, it felt special. And I had that same feeling when I picked up the Fujifilm X-T2. It is a really well thought out, designed and built camera. Now for me, the best tool to do any job is the simplest one. And when I started off shooting photographs back in my childhood, it was with something very similar to this. This is a Canon AV1 film camera. It has permanent aperture priority mode, this one. So, but it has a camera spool where you choose your ISO or ASA value, and once the film's in there and locked in, you can't change that. That's permanent. An aperture ring on the lens to open and close the aperture, and a shutter speed dial, albeit on this one a very simplified one, and your release button, and that was it. That's what took your photos. Now, with the advent of the digital age, cameras became increasingly more complex, and in some cases you had to delve into menus and sub-menus just to do something quite simple. But picking this Fuji X-T2 up in my local camera shop was like a breath of fresh air. You looked at the camera and you thought, oh, okay, it's like an old film camera. You got an ISO dial where the film selector would have been before. You've got a shutter speed, and you've got an aperture ring on your camera. This one's not numbered, but on some of my Fuji lenses the aperture ring is numbered, so you can pick the camera up and without even turning it on you can see what settings it's on without having to look at the screen or anything. And that, for me, the simplicity of that really makes this camera. Yes, it does loads of other things as well, and there are menus and sub-menus, but if you want to pick this up and take a photograph, you can. I mean, underneath the ISO dial you've got all the drive modes, from single shot to continuous low, continuous high, video, bracketing, whatever. And underneath the shutter speed dial you've got your metering mode, so you've got your evaluative and you've got spot and you've got average metering. Again, you've got your aperture ring on the lens. So picking this up was like going back 40 years for me. The design and the size, very, very similar. Now I took up photography because I was I'm technically minded, I like things like that, and cameras always fascinated me. But now it's the simplicity of this thing that really grabs me. I don't think a designer has designed this camera. I think a photographer has, or he certainly had a great deal of input into it. And you look at some of the cameras these days and you can't really say that. Yeah, so I think that this is going to become as iconic a camera as Nikon's D700. Now of course, all the nice design, aesthetics and build quality are going to count for nothing if the image quality is rubbish. And I'm so glad to say that that's not the case with this Fujifilm. Now I had some reservations going from a full frame 36 megapixel sensor down to a 24 megapixel crop sensor or APS-C sensor. But I needn't have worried. I honestly think, and again this is purely subjective, it's my eyes and my brain deciphering these images, but I feel that I get better images from this camera than I got from the Nikon. Now that might well be down to flaws in my technique. I mean, the more megapixels you're handling with your camera, the more spot on your technique has got to be. So perhaps I wasn't as good as I thought I was. But no, for me, the images out of this are better. I think the Fuji sensor renders colour better. It renders contrast better. There's something about the way that it captures light. I've seen another YouTuber say this about the Fuji camera. I think it was Eric Marks on Finding Middle-earth. And no, I'm not going to rip him off, but he's right. The way this sensor records light seems different to other cameras. Now I'm not being overly romantic about this camera, at least I don't think I am, because I parted with a lot of money to buy it and invested a lot of myself in getting the images out of it. But to hear other people saying the same things about this camera and about this sensor, I think for me justifies what I'm saying. Anyway, that's enough of me rambling on for this week. I've got quite a stressful week coming up. I've got my hospital appointment next Tuesday. So hopefully I'll be back next Sunday. And hopefully before much longer I'll be able to get outside and do some proper filming. Yeah, and that's it. So from Dexter and me, we'll see you very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.